The Boston Celtics are once again standing at the edge of transformation, and the names driving this new chapter are not the ones you expect. Forget the usual headlines about Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown for a moment, because the story that is quietly brewing behind the scenes is one that could completely reshape how the team looks in the 2025 and 2026 season. It begins with a 7'1" giant from Portugal who has carried the weight of being overlooked for years, and it continues with a guard who has lived in the shadows of others but suddenly finds the spotlight pointed directly at him. Their futures are uncertain, their roles are unpolished, but the potential they carry could determine whether Boston remains at the summit of the league or takes a step back. Neemias Queta has been fighting against invisibility since he first set foot on an NBA court. On paper, his minutes last season were modest, his numbers ordinary, but inside the Celtics locker room, something very different has been happening. Joe Mazzulla has been sending him messages all summer, not just casual encouragement, but specific guidance, recognition, and belief. This is not the treatment you give to a player you see as disposable. This is the way a coach speaks to someone he envisions as a cornerstone, as a long-term solution at a position that has haunted the Celtics ever since the league shifted back towards size and rim protection. When your head coach invests that kind of attention in you during the offseason, it is because he knows the potential is waiting to burst open. Queta himself has made it clear. He feels rested, sharper, more evolved after his Eurobasket experience. But he has also said something more important, something that speaks volumes about his state of mind. He has confidence. Not empty words, not bravado, but the kind of grounded belief that comes from putting in work. That matters because when you're 7'1" and weigh over 300 pounds, confidence is not optional, it is survival. Without it, you shrink in the biggest moments. With it, you transform into a presence that can dictate the game. Boston has seen great big men before, but what makes Queta's case unique is that he is combining that physical presence with an awareness that he must adapt, reduce fouls, understand spacing, and trust his shooters. That willingness to evolve is what separates players who fade away from those who explode onto the scene. Now imagine this. A Celtics starting lineup where Peyton Pritchard commands the point guard spot, where Derrick White and Jaylen Brown handle both ends of the floor, and where the front court suddenly becomes a wall with Chris Boucher and Neemias Queta sharing the paint. This is not a hypothetical born out of desperation. This is a rotation that has been seriously considered. It is a gamble, yes, but it is also a window into how much belief the organization is starting to place in Queta. For a player who once struggled to even carve out 14 minutes a night, this is a breathtaking change. But it will only matter if he can refine the areas that have held him back. Queta has to prove he can stay on the court without foul trouble, and if he does that, his numbers will rise naturally. He has to sharpen his understanding of floor spacing, which is not glamorous, but is essential for someone who will often share the floor with shooters like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, and Derrick White. He has to be able to recognize where those shooters will be, deliver the ball with precision, and trust that the system will reward him for that sacrifice. He also has to master the most basic but critical skill for a man of his size, securing the ball near the rim. If he does not drop passes, if he does not fumble in traffic, the result will almost always be either 2 points or free throws. That alone could elevate him from a rotation player to a centerpiece. The real wild card is his mid-range touch. We have already seen flashes in Europe, fadeaways at the elbow, confident jumpers at the horn. If he can bring even a fraction of that to the NBA floor, suddenly defenders cannot just collapse on him at the rim. Suddenly the paint opens, shooters get more space, and Boston has a weapon they never truly had in their modern era, a big man who can defend the rim, dominate the boards, and also stretch just enough to keep defenses honest. So what does this mean for numbers? If Queta does his part, projections for the 2025 and 2026 season hover around 8 or 9 points per game, 7 rebounds, and over 1 block per night, while shooting around 64% from the field. Those may sound like modest figures, but they are not. They are the statistical footprint of a breakout big who changes the balance of games without demanding touches. And with his body, his length, and his new confidence, there's every reason to believe that is realistic. While Queta prepares to shock the league, another story is unfolding in the backcourt. Derrick White is no longer the quiet complementary piece he once was. With Jrue Holiday gone and Jayson Tatum sidelined, the stage is suddenly his, whether he wants it or not. And most fascinating part is that even Derrick himself admits he does not know what his role will be. He has spoken openly on his podcast about avoiding the trap of overthinking, about not wanting to put himself in a mental box where he feels he has to replicate Tatum or anyone else. He insists he must remain true to his game, to the things that make him successful. But here lies the twist. Remaining true to himself will not be enough. The Celtics need more from Derrick White than ever before. They need him to be a scorer some nights, a playmaker on others, a defensive anchor when matchups demand it. They need him to step into roles that may shift game by game, and that requires a level of adaptability very few players can handle. White has the tools. He has shown the ability to shoot with deadly accuracy, to guard the league's best scorers, and to organize the offense. What he has not shown yet is whether he can maintain those standards without the cushion of Tatum drawing the defensive gravity every single night. The truth is that Boston's hopes this season may hinge as much on White's consistency as on Brown's leadership. And consistency has not always been his trademark. His three-point shooting has fluctuated dramatically from month to month. One stretch, he is over 40%, the next he dips below 33%. Those wild swings cannot continue if Boston wants to remain at the top of the Eastern Conference. The team does not need him to become a 30-point scorer every night, but they do need him to be a steady 20-point threat with reliable efficiency. This is where the curiosity comes in. Can Derrick White rise from being the reliable glue guy to becoming the unexpected star of a team in transition? Can he carry the offense when defenses load up on Brown? Can he silence the doubts about whether Boston has enough firepower without Tatum? The answers are not obvious, and that uncertainty is what makes this season so compelling. Imagine a scenario where Queta fulfills his projection, where he limits fouls, dominates the glass, and anchors the defense, while Derrick White finds the consistency that has eluded him, hitting his outside shots and embracing the role of secondary star. That combination changes everything. It means Boston is not just surviving without Tatum, they are thriving in a new identity built on balance, size, and adaptability. It means the Celtics are not vulnerable, they are dangerous in a way nobody anticipated. So here is the challenge for fans. Picture the 2025 and 2026 Celtics not as a weakened team waiting for their superstar to return, but as a lab experiment in evolution. Queta is the variable inside the paint, a force who could finally solve the riddle of rim protection for the long term. White is the variable on the perimeter, a player whose role might shift by the hour, but whose ceiling could push Boston into a territory of versatility that most teams cannot match. If both of them embrace this moment, the Celtics will not just hold their ground, they might create a version of themselves that is even harder to stop when Tatum eventually returns. And now the question goes back to you. Do you believe Neemias Queta is ready to be more than a backup, to step into the spotlight as the long-awaited solution at center? Do you believe Derrick White can become an all-star level guard who thrives in unpredictability? Because the answers to those questions will decide whether Boston writes a season of survival or a season of surprise dominance. So Celtics fans, drop your predictions in the comments. What stat line do you expect for Queta this season? Can White carry the offensive load when the moment demands it? And most importantly, are you ready for the possibility that the players who were once considered secondary pieces may actually be the key to keeping the dynasty dream alive? Celtics may be standing on the edge of a move that could reshape their future in ways most people are not even considering. On the surface, it looks like a routine trade proposal, one of those ideas that float around during the off-season and disappear after a few headlines. But dig deeper, and the picture becomes more intriguing, more complex, and perhaps even more revealing of how the front office is planning to navigate a season filled with uncertainty. According to scenarios recently discussed by NBC Sports Boston, the Celtics could part ways with Anthony Simons and land Nikola Vucevic from the Chicago Bulls. At first glance, this might not sound like a blockbuster. It is not the kind of move that sends shockwaves across ESPN or dominates social media trends for weeks. But the real story is not about the names involved, it is about what this move unlocks. Boston would not only bring in a veteran center who has averaged over 18 points and 10 rebounds for almost a decade, but also clear close to $6 million in salary. That number may not sound glamorous, but in the financial chessboard of the NBA, every dollar saved under the luxury tax apron is a weapon, and Brad Stevens has shown he knows how to use those weapons with precision. Think about the timing. The Celtics are roughly $12 million away from avoiding heavy tax penalties. This is not just about saving money, it is about flexibility, about the ability to make mid-season moves when opportunities appear, about keeping the window open for the next massive extension that Jayson Tatum will inevitably demand. Teams that ignore these details get trapped. Teams that plan around them keep doors open. Stevens has always been part of the second category. Now consider the other side of this equation. Anthony Simons is a talented scorer, no one denies that, but the question is not whether he can play, the question is whether he fits. In a backcourt that already features Derrick White, Peyton Pritchard, and a rotation designed around defensive balance, Simons has always looked like an extra piece that does not perfectly connect. His contract is expiring at the end of the season, and the Celtics know extending him would create a financial ripple effect that makes little sense with Tatum and Jaylen Brown already consuming massive portions of the cap. Keeping him would risk losing him for nothing. Trading him now means turning a piece that does not fit into one that does, while also buying time and money for the future. This is where Vucevic becomes more than just a name on a box score. He is a proven veteran, a two-time All-Star player who has log-heavy playoff minutes and knows what it takes to anchor a frontcourt in the toughest environments. He is not a ball stopper. He moves within the system, he passes out of doubles, and he can stretch the floor enough to keep Boston's spacing intact. In a league where centers often slow down the offense, Vucevic complements it. And perhaps most importantly, he provides a model for younger bigs like Neemias Queta and Chris Boucher. Development is not just about minutes, it is about learning how to play the right way, and few centers in the league have been as consistently professional as Vucevic over the past decade. Some critics will ask whether bringing in a 34-year-old center signals a step backward. But that question ignores the context. Jayson Tatum is expected to miss significant time this season. The front office is not labeling it a gap year, but the writing is clear. This is a season for experimentation, for giving minutes to players like Pritchard and Sam Hauser, for discovering which pieces belong to the next great Celtics team. Adding Vucevic does not change that mission, it supports it. He gives the roster stability in the paint while the rest of the team evolves. And if Tatum returns late in the season to a group that has survived and even thrived, Boston could suddenly find itself as one of the most dangerous underdogs in the East. Do not underestimate the timing of this. The Eastern Conference is unusually open. Outside of a few strong contenders, there is no untouchable giant standing in the way. A Celtics roster featuring Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, and Vucevic, surrounded by young players hungry to prove themselves, can absolutely compete for a playoff spot. If Tatum comes back at the right moment, the script changes entirely. That possibility alone makes the risk worthwhile. And remember, this would not be the final chapter. If Stevens pulls this off, it is unlikely to be the only move. The savings from Simons' contract could be the first domino that sets up a bigger swing later in the year. We have seen this before. The Porzingis trade, the quick flip for R.J. Lewis Jr., the constant adjustments that show this front office is not afraid of acting fast. Vucevic could be here for the season, or he could be flipped again before the deadline if another opportunity appears. Either way, Boston wins by gaining control. This is why fans should not see this as a small move. It is not small at all. It is strategic, it is layered, and it may be the kind of decision that separates a team drifting in mediocrity from one that keeps its championship window alive. The whispers around the league suggest that the Celtics are not done, that this could only be the beginning. And in Boston, beginnings often lead to something much bigger.